Now we can we can hand over. Okay, so here's again just the title, and so this is Sebastian, this is Svenja, and yeah, we were already introduced, but well, my position in my team is that I'm a community manager. So I'm working more in the fields of communications, engaging people, trying to activate people, and supporting people with the use of technology. And yeah,
I'm
Sebastian
Felix. I'm a software developer working as a freelance software developer with Svenja Heinecke right now. And we also have a surprise guest over there who also works with us. It's Tana. Hi.
Nice to see you here. Yeah, so yeah, and well, exchange and crowdsource accessibility information, that's what it's about. And just let me introduce the Sozialhelden briefly, because that's the non-profit organization where the project is embedded. So we're a bunch of people having different backgrounds, educational backgrounds, like we work in, or we were educated in communications, finances, and design thinking, law, politics. So it's really like a pretty diverse in the topics we were coming from. And what brought us together was the goal to invest the time we work for into social impact and social change. So yeah, we really want to, change something for the better and figure out where problems are, current problems are in society, and take those problems and try to develop practical solutions. So yeah, and well, as you can see from the picture, we're having people with disabilities in our team, and we're working in several. Oh no, it's happening again. In different projects. So it's not just like the physical accessibility of the environment, but we're also working like in projects with mental barriers, which reflect in language, in the media. So this is another area in our work we're dealing with, but today we're focusing on accessibility information and the physical barriers. And yeah, so in this kind of topics, it is a basic decision. If you wait for politics and decision-making processes to evolve and to come eventually into being, or what we did is to decide, okay, we want to start something to get people engaged so that we can start today. We don't rely on anybody else. We just take what's there and start now. And yeah, so, and eventually maybe the impact becomes big enough for all those mainstream products to get into this as well, So to build up importance and pressure. So the problem is with accessibility of places that when we started, like in 2010, it was more than today, that hardly any information about that was available, or it was widely spread on websites and pieces, on, I don't know, on Excel sheets, on wherever. So there was hardly a good collection which you could make use of. And what we also found is the biggest problem when we started the project Wheelmap was that the basic problem in accessibility is for a wheelchair user, and we have those in our team, so that was the point where we started from, is the first step at the entrance, This is kind of the barrier which just, stops the show, which just makes it impossible to enter a place. So that was that was the starting point of Wheelmap, and so that's why we had like an approach where we kept this very simple first criteria, and started from that, you know, and yeah, and the story behind it was that our founder of the Sozialhelden, Raul, who is in a wheelchair himself, was meeting another today's colleague of mine, and they were discussing projects and stuff. And they were, each time when they met, they were like, "Oh damn, did you remember which cafe was accessible for you?" And it was like, "Oh no, I forgot already. Okay, let's go back to the old cafe where we always met, you know." And eventually, this other colleague who was not in a wheelchair was kind of pissed off about that fact, you know, we always meet in the same cafe, so and it's boring, and can we not just remember, you know, where we've been the other time? And that's the point where they thought, okay, it could be so cool to have something like an online map where you can pretty easily, like Wikipedia, just save the information. Very simple with a few clicks if this place is accessible for wheelchair users or not. And so that was, you know, that was the basic thought. Okay, let's create a map, and if just everybody who's got those experiences and the local knowledge on hand would do the same everywhere in the world, then we could collect a large data collection, and when another wheelchair user is in that area, he would also see and benefit from this knowledge of another person if this place is accessible or not. So, yay! And
almost there.
That's a good a good point to show you the current version of Wheelmap today. So this is how it looks now. You see like a lot of green, orange, red markers, and the good news is, after 8 years, we've collected more than 830,000 little data pieces on wheelchair accessible places, or not, or partially. But it's, you know, with this very simple method, it was pretty easy for people to participate, and and of course it's because it's open source, it's open data, so it can be used in other applications as well. It's in 24 languages today. It's all work of the community who you know who found important to have it in Japanese or in Chinese, you know. So it kind of spread everywhere. We've also developed iPhone app and an Android app for that. And the question is, okay, we roughly make like 100,000 places per year. How does that happen, you know? And we've learned that there are those two main ingredients. First, the technology is, you know, the flow for the user is easy to understand and quickly done. And for this basic step to just say if an entrance is accessible or not, you just can make it with 2 clicks. You know, you don't have to register. And the second part, of course, is people. So from very early, we had like also a community concept to provide support materials, to write down some ideas on how people can get active and initiate their own events, and together in groups and get on the road to do the real work, to go to a place, evaluate, we really check on everything and the physical environment. And somehow there were a lot of people who thought this was a brilliant idea. So we got a lot of awards for this approach to engage the civil society, to provide easy engagement activities, you know, to make people help themselves and exchange knowledge, rather than wait for anything or for anybody else to do this for them. So, okay, and then along the way we of course learned that there are other non-profit organizations or companies or services that are doing roughly the same like we did in the last couple of years. There's Jaxet in France, who, well, they have their own community, and they also gathered their own 100,000 places in the last years. Well, you know, the rating systems have some similarities, but they are different in the details. So also in what becomes evaluated on the road. And there's Access Map from the USA, also with 100,000 places. So, and they focus more on their own regions, countries, and, you know, cultural contacts. But they also have, like, Jaxet also has, I don't know how many places in Germany.
I don't know how many.
But you know that also their communities have started to spread and, you know, to widen. So, and then we have got, service everybody knows, Foursquare, and Here Maps. Here Maps is, I don't know if you know, but it's the provider of car navigation. So all big car manufacturers use Here Maps for the systems. So and that brought us to the point just recently that we thought, okay, there are so many other data collections that already exist. So how can we make use of that, and how can we bring all of this together and develop like a format to interpret each other's data, you know? And so this is the real technical stuff now, and I hand over to Sebastian.
Thanks.
To explain you the magic.
I'm going to introduce you this service that we built, Accessibility Cloud. It's on the web. You can reach it right now and use it, maybe after the talk. How it works is like this. This is a technical structure. So on the left you see data sources, various ones, not all of them, not all of the ones that we have. We have more than just some examples. In the middle you see our database that's collecting these data from the left side. And we provide an API that you and everybody else can use for getting the data in a harmonized format. We currently use this with WeMap, or with a new version of WeMap, and are also able to transfer this back to OSM, to OpenStreetMaps. So the whole thing, as you can see, starts a bit with OpenStreetMaps and goes into OpenStreetMaps again. An interesting thing here for you is that you can put in your data sources. So if you collect any kind of data, if you have a community that collects data about accessibility of physical places, you can put it into Accessibility Cloud. It's actually not that difficult. And if you already think about it, maybe you want to talk to us after the talk. The other thing is that your apps can use all of this. It's like there is a lot of information about buildings that we have. If you have any use for that, talk to us and build apps on top of that stuff. How it looks if you add one of your data sources, might be like this. Ooh, no. There should be a YouTube video starting here. Yeah, maybe it does now. So this is an example data source from Access Maps that we added. Don't mind the blinking, that's YouTube. And what you can see here is that it's creating statistics for your data as well. So if you do not want to do this yourself, then you can just make use of what we built for you already. For example, here on Access Maps, you see various attributes that you don't find on WeMap yet. For example, you see that we have information about buildings that allow guide dogs. And we also have information that might help people with a lot of other disabilities. Oops. No, that was the wrong one. What we did with this thing was that we harmonized a lot of different data formats. It's like, it seems every municipality invents their own data format for accessibility of buildings. So for some buildings you might get, like, for example, the number of steps at the entrance, and for some buildings you might get information about that their doorbell sign is at a specific height and it has a specific font size or whatever. And the thing is that you also get a lot of data that says the same in different formats. And what we did with Accessibility Cloud was that we created one format that we want to be a global standard for all kind of accessibility data of buildings. Here's an example of this. Here you just see, for example, the media format that describes media items that you might find in places. For example, you might find a site map in a station, for example, or you might find a sign at the entrance of a building that says where you have to go. And this is just a little example of the attributes that we can collect about these signs that hang everywhere. And it's important to measure all these things. Another thing that we have to talk about is toilets. We have to talk about that more often, it seems, because we have for example, we have a startup in San Francisco with a juice maker with an app, but we don't even figure out how toilets work for people. It's really a thing. It's like many people cannot go to toilets, and we have to figure this out. And for figuring this out, somebody has to measure how this all works. So we collected a lot of attributes about toilets as well. So for example, a foldable handle might be on the left side or on the right side. That's something that currently no data source provides. But it's really important because you might have an arm on the right side or on the left side, and it's really important to be able to use this thing. Another thing is, you can extend this format. We need comments on this. This is a request for comments. So if you're a developer and you have some thoughts about how to extend this format, or if you have a data source that provides specific attributes and you think you have found the best way of collecting these attributes, it's a good idea to talk to us. Either make a pull request here or just talk to us. We are humans, we are right here, and you can do that. Accessibility Cloud itself is an open source project as well, so everybody who wants can contribute to it. And if you want to make a little or big change, just do it. It's right there. And we are really willing and eager to help you with this. There's a thing that I wanted to share that we learned along the way when building data formats about accessibility. What we see here is something that we found in many data sources that we think is bad practice, or we found out is bad practice, as it doesn't describe a place, it describes human beings. And this is very common. It's like you have a lot of accessibility apps that do not actually collect data about buildings, but collect data about humans. The thing is that every time you have something that helps somebody with a specific disability, it might also help people with a different disability or people that do not have a disability at all. Still, you want to collect these attributes. And it doesn't really make sense to, for example, say this one building is probably made for everybody who has a specific disability that is in this list here, for example. It doesn't make any sense because everybody is different. Everybody has different needs. And what you need to collect is not if your building your building is easy to use for somebody in a specific category, because you make an assumption about these people in this category, and that's the wrong way. Because what you need to do is you need to collect the actual things that are in this building, and then people can choose for themselves if they want to use it or not. As I said, everybody has different needs, and somebody who has a wheelchair might be able to climb stairs or not, for example. And if you just say, well, my building works for people who have a wheelchair, it doesn't say anything about if it works for all people who have a wheelchair. So yeah, that's something that we found and that I wanted to share. So if you do something like this, maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it's like the obvious thing. I know that a person has a wheelchair if I see that. That's one thing, but you have to collect the other things as well to make it work. So yeah, categorize facilities, not people's needs. That's what we learned. Here's an example of this. So if you provide specific services, just list them. Just list what do you actually do, or what do other people actually do for people with disabilities. Here's an example of the new wheel map. It's maybe the first time it's in the public, or one of the first times it's shown to the public. It's also reachable on the web, wheelmap.org/beta. You can actually see this on your phone or on your desktop. This already uses all the data that is on Accessibility Cloud. that is available under a license that works with Wheelmap. So for example here, on the left you see the details of a place. You see it still in the developer format. So it, yeah, you have the camel case notation here. But never mind that, it's going to be translated soon to all the languages that we support. And the thing is now, if you click on one place like this, it's not only green, and you can make some assumptions on why it is green. I mean, green can mean a lot. Some people think something should be green, and some other people think, okay, it's not accessible for me at all. So you see some entrance attributes, for example, here, that we collected from Jaxet. So Jaxet had their people going and, for example, measuring the numbers of stairs of buildings. They had actual, they made actual centimeter measurements, so you know how high the stairs are and stuff like this. So you know the entrance width. You know if you can actually navigate inside a place, and they have a lot of data about this.
Yeah,
and you can also use it in Wheelmap now.
So just to make clear, you know, so you see here now a data source or a node, an entry from another app, you know. So this is Jaxet data, and you see, well, it's interpreted in a way which makes useful Wheelmap, because it still does the interpretation of is it wheelchair accessible or not. But still, it lists some of those details, which is the new thing. And you cannot edit it here, but you can go to Jaxet again and use their app and edit the kind of information and attributes which they use, you know. And still, it is a way to kind of merge those sources, you know, and to increase, because now we've got more than 1.3 million places, you know, compared to those 830,000 places. So there you can see already the impact of, well, what happens when all those data collections can work together and can be exchanged and function as a big whole, you know, and the user itself doesn't have to know where all this data come from, but he or she will search from those apps which he or she is used to. So this might be Jaxet in France or Wheelmap in Germany or Access Maps. So and there will be Wheelmap data inside, but the idea is it becomes bigger, and well, we can just give the data to the user which is there as a common force on this accessibility matter. So that's what makes it bigger an impact.
Yeah, so this is an example of mainstreaming. We do not want to collect all data in the world just to put it into Wheelmap, but we want to put it in every app that needs it. We want to put it in your apps, if that's possible. So yeah, talk to us. There's another thing that we also introduced, that's live data updates. You might already know that when you, for example, search for a trip on deutschebahn.de, you can see the elevators on your trip if you need that, and you can see if they actually work, because there is a lot of vandalism and they often just break. So it it's very likely that 5% of currently built elevators in Germany are currently not active, which is really a thing, because like you have your standard route, for example, to work and from work, and you really want to know if the elevators on this thing on this route actually work. So we also came up with a solution for that in Accessibility Cloud. Here is an example of this, if it works. If I can press the button and it actually works. No, the video is unavailable. What you would have seen here is a list of elevators, or a map of elevators. For example, in Hauptbahnhof, we have all the elevators of Hauptbahnhof and all the escalators as well. And we also have the current live updated status of these elevators and escalators. And we do have this not only for Deutsche Bahn, but we also connected several other data sources as well. So our aim is to have some kind of international solution and international one-size-fits-all API that enables you to see elevator, escalator data, like all kinds of facilities that people need could be in there at some point.
Okay, maybe is it a good point here to ask for your questions first, maybe?
Yeah.
Because this was quite complex part, so maybe to clarify directly. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Is it important for you, and if so, do you have a way to verify user data?
Okay.
The data that is submitted, if it's valid, if it's up to date, all this.
Okay, so the question if there's a way to verify data and if it's up to date and true. The point is we cannot physically go there and check on it, you know. So that's why we decided for this decentralized user approach and crowdsourced approach directly, because it's much more like that users which live in this area will go there and check it again eventually, than us, I don't know, getting on the phone and asking the restaurant owner if this is true. No, we don't have a concrete possibility to verify, but we've learned so far that users verify themselves, you know, and that's well, kind of the crowdsourcing approach. What has been added now with this, you know, new data collections we have, is that also JAXET might have already, you know, some collection, some data set for the same place, and which will be displayed at the same time. So it's kind of more and more that different data sets also verifying each other. So and so it becomes more transparent to the user, you know, and that's our way of handling this question.
I can give you also.
How do you deal with like contradictory data?
I can.
You average it, you throw it away.
We actually do average it in some cases. So, for example, if you have, there's one specific Starbucks in Paris right now, where we have 4 data points from different sources and they contradict each other. So it's like one says green, one says red, and one says yellow, and one says I don't know about it. I think it's there, but I have no idea if it's any color. We do actually average this. So, for example, if you have one green and one red and one yellow flag, we show it as yellow. But if you click on it, you can see the details. You can see why it is this color. So you can also see the raw input data as a user if you want this. But yeah, we do have this problem, and I think the way of just showing what is actually there is one that is really good. The other thing is if you start collecting the actual measurements, for example, of a place. For example, is the entrance like 80 centimeters wide or not? That's something where people would not disagree so much about. It's like they more disagree about things like is this accessible or not? Because that's something that varies from person to person. But if you base this thing, like do I display a green or red or yellow thing on the actual measurements that you make, that's something that is much better in quality in the end. So that's also why we do this actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, how users receive Wheelmap? Like, how many people use it? How big is it?
Okay, so the question is how many people use WeMap? We've got a rough regular user group of like 10,000, so using pretty regularly. I think we've got like on our web app, we've got like 30 to 40,000 visits. So there are, you know, also maybe short-term users, because we've also the bunch of people organized in mapping events who might be one-time users or 2 times, but you know, so those different user groups have different intensities. And then we've got sorry.
Per day, per month, per year. What is the
Per month, so 30 to 40,000 visits per month. So and then we've got like also the apps with downloads, like about 100,000 downloads for the Android app and the iPhone app each. Yeah. So, and we've got like roughly also per month like 8 to 10,000 new entries, which builds up to this 100,000 places each year. That's maybe also a good number to, you know, for just having the impression of.
Since you have an API, what is the reason behind making it read-only? I mean, the reason I'm asking is because if you're integrated with with apps that have much bigger user base, like Earmaps or Foursquare,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, there are bigger possibilities if users of those apps can contribute directly through Foursquare or through Earmaps and update this information, because these users will never download Wheelmap.
So this question is about why we currently have a read-only API.
Yes.
It's like this: the API itself is read-only currently. The thing is, we currently pull each data set in, because it's just a technical matter. It's like easier for caching right now. But we plan to also have an API that you can use with post requests, for example, for your own application if you need it. This would make the whole thing a backend that you can fully use to base your app upon. Currently, it's like you have to also keep a collection of the data. You can make it available to us, for example, as CSV files or as an API. We can collect data from, for example, paginated JSON APIs, XML, and so on. And it's like the web page also includes a little IDE that, as a developer, enables you to, in a very simple way, stream your data into our backend. That's all existing, and you can also have a look at it later. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Okay.
Okay, any more? Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so now that's the part again where we get back a bit to the community part of all of that. Just with this new backend, we thought, okay, what can we do now and make use of this new exchange format? And you know, because, well, coming from a wheel map which only evaluates wheelchair accessibility, and now with all those harmonious data and attributes we have in the accessibility cloud, we thought, okay, so there's a new potential here, because there are a lot of other communities focusing on other kinds of disabilities and access. And maybe they've got their communities, but they don't have the knowledge of IT development or, you know, technology. So there is a possibility to provide them with all of that attributes and technology which we have, to let them collect the data, you know, in a way which they need it. And currently we're working on an app which can be customized as an app for collecting data, and which can also serve for managing also a bit those events which are taking place. And we have a little screencast of you how this could look like. So starting from the point where you've received an invitation to take part in a kind of an event, you know, and where you can register with your email. And then you get an email and you're kind of, you're kind of invited to take part in that. Let's go back one more. And then you've got, here it is. So you see, like, you know, somebody, the organizer of the event already set time and date of this event, you know, and you as a user, you just have to participate, and you see that roughly the area you will be in, you know, doing the mapping part, and you see the goal of the mapping event. Like, okay, the goal for the group is to collect information on 90 places. So, and that's 27 days to go, and just right before the event, you get an invitation link to use the app and to open the app in the browser, and then you can start right away with your mobile phone and telling the location, and the map will show you what you can do in this area. So you can start doing your first entry. You can have the shop owner to assist you, you know, with verifying that you're entering the right basic data, like what is the name of the place, and what kind of place is it. So it's just kind of the basic things. And you then more and more you start, going deeper into the details of the place. You start with the address, and then the entrance is the first thing you kind of evaluate for accessibility, and then you choose which kind of entrance it is. Thank you. And then, you're starting to measure, basically. You can give in the concrete spaces, the centimeters, the steps. Yeah, then you can, that's already one step more than wheel map measures, like the width of the door, another attribute. And you are guided through those little, just those little questions. And what you see here is that you don't have to do any interpretation of this information. That's what the app is doing itself, So the result is it's green, yellow, or red. But you don't have to have all that in mind. It's just what the app is interpreting from your entries. So yeah, that's what we're currently in. So and then, yeah, you can go on with the next place around the corner. Yeah. That's pretty simple. And of course, the customization, you can choose from 150 attributes. You can choose as many if you want, but it's about you as an initiator who knows the community to decide, okay, what is your field of expertise? How much time do I have? How many people are involved? So what is good? What kind of combinations, constellation is good for me to apply in this kind of mapping event and in this data you want to assess. Okay.
Where this might help you is, for example, if you work for a business that specializes in analyzing these kind of data, or that needs this data for some business case, you might not have the resources to create something like this. And what we do is we share this with you, and it enables you to create a community around the business data that you need, without having to build all the IT around it and to maintain it and so on. That's like the model behind this.
Okay, yeah, and that's kind of the results and the summary of all of that is that what you see is that the data you've entered with this kind of app appears as another data source. So where you don't have already data you can share in a file or a database, or you have another big service which provides those data, you create it from scratch with the help of this app, and and it feeds into the accessibility cloud, and from there again it can be used. It shows up in the new version of the wheel map. You can export the data, use it again. Maybe 2 years later you want to verify again, or you want to add more attributes. So you can use the same set again. You can use it in other location-based apps or databases. So it's it's kind of there. It's sustainable, and so without even having this IT knowledge, you have like an extract of the map and the mapping event. You've just you've just evaluated.
So it's like you might be starting with a CSV table from Excel with some data attributes, and in the end you end up with something that other people can use in their research studies, for example. It's like you make this data available for everybody if you want this, under your license, of course, but you can make it available whenever you want. And it's not like it's in some GitHub somewhere hidden from the public, and people might be able to find it at some point or not. It's like there is a central point, central entry point for people who want to research about accessibility data, and they can just find all these data sources on our page and go from there. It makes things much easier, and they have it in one format in the end, and not in 10,000.
Okay, so now let's little summary. What can you do now? You've hearing all of that. So depending on where you are with your work or what your motivation is. So what already said, you can share your data you already have and join Accessibility Cloud. So if you want to talk about that, just come to us. We can guide you through the registration process. You can contribute your knowledge and go to GitHub, see what's there, make your comments and pull requests. So it's open data, so you're pretty welcome to contribute. If you feel like you want to use the apps or WeMap Pro and organize your own mapping event, then WeMap Pro might be a good thing to go from, and create the data you want to have, you want to embed whatever, and share. You can also make use of the data and start changing the physical environment. It's one of the projects we've developed as a complement for WeMap.org, where we found, or where we, once we've evaluated the places and know which places have a step at the entrance, we can use it and promote to use mobile ramps, to make places accessible pretty easy. So if you're interested in that and you know already there are some places you would like to make accessible, that's also a possibility. And and otherwise just keep in touch, stay tuned. If some of the projects are interesting to you or you want to see the brand new beta soon with all the nice new sources and features, then come and visit us. We're also on Facebook and WeMap and Twitter, of course. And and otherwise come to us, talk to us if you've got more questions.
Let us know about your projects as well, because there might be things we can share. That's it.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for your attention.